Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HodlCast. We're coming to you from the virtual moon, exploring some of the Zoom settings today with special guest Leah Wald. Don't disappear.
And Sasha has a pup. So if Mr. Gator does decide to join us again, you will have a guest appearance of someone else on the moon.
Mhm.
But thanks, Sasha.
Thank you for coming. So let's just take it away, Leah. How did you get involved in Bitcoin?
Yeah, so that's always a difficult question, right? It's always, how did you start like full-time as your job, decide to jump into or learn about Bitcoin? But I guess I'll start with how I started with Tyler. So hope that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we're going in and out. Sorry. So actually I started because I learned about shitcoins first, and one of my friends is a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, and he was sending me all these articles about all the ICOs that he was excited about. And at the time I was working for a Canadian licensing company, and I was helping them structure their IPO. So I get sent all these articles about ICO. I go to the CTO and I'm like, oh my God, why are we not doing an ICO? This is the most amazing thing ever. You know, we just need the liquidity. We should do this. And looking into it, of course, right, whatever looks like it's too good to be true definitely is. And how I learned that hardcore was actually, again, Tyler was one of our closest family friends. And people don't often know the background of that. And that ties into the story. So his son and my brother started their first company at 19.
Oh, nice.
And I'm 4 years younger. So when they dropped out of college, started their first company, you know, the parents decided, all right, let's help our sons out. So I've known Tyler since 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So, okay. So he was at Thanksgiving dinner and I'm telling him about all these ICOs, and I was very surprised for, at the time, he was 68. He's telling me about Bitcoin and that he had been mining and that he's been, you know, investing in GBTC, and he's all excited. And I pretty much was looking across the table, and I've known Tyler forever, but I'm like, seriously, man? Like, okay. And so one of the first things he said is, Leah, that's totally illegal. You can't do that. Like, you're being ridiculous. Stop this. Here's Bitcoin. And so
the voice of reason.
The voice of reason. And so needless to say, I actually quit that job and started with Tyler for full time. So that's actually how I ended up in it. I will say, and this is contrary to what people love to say about the spaces, I did find it confusing at first, right? ICOs just sounded amazing.
Oh yeah.
Really, really amazing. And until you have, I truly believe, a good voice of reason, whether it's YouTube stars like Tone and Jimmy, hey guys, Giacomo, there's so many amazing people in the space, or you attend a conference and you actually get enough knowledge that you can actually make your own decisions and understand really the importance of Bitcoin and what you're really seeing in shitcoins, and also the dangers of trying to go down that route. I think that it's tough. So I feel like I was lucky that even when I hadn't even, you know, known too much about it, besides these articles being sent, and, you know, Andreessen Horowitz is pretty reputable. So I was thinking that, you know, it's very kosher, you know, needless to say, for a better word. But luckily Tyler straightened me out hardcore pretty quickly. So then we went full time. I was like, Tyler, I don't think I can afford my rent. What's this idea? And, you know, so we really launched Lucid's crypto arm, and that's how that started.
Nice.
Long-winded.
No. And then how did you get I used to watch the morning brief with you, Jimmy, and Tone, you know, pretty much every day, or, you know, while I was driving, running, whatever, I was listening to it. And that was before I had met you. So it was really cool when I got to meet you in person the first time. But how did you get involved with doing that?
So to say thank you, Jimmy and Tone, because they did a morning brief yesterday. So I'm like, you know, so it's really exciting that, you know, it came back, I should say. So I met Tone in kind of a ridiculous way, and I was very lucky that Tone believed in me enough to throw me into the fire of trying to moderate the Bitcoin morning brief when it was just Tone and Jimmy. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And also, I didn't know that much about the minutia of Bitcoin.
But you learned quickly.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like we're really lucky with, with certain people in the space is just, I feel like our community actually really supports the community, and so, they really took me under their wing, and I'm really, really appreciative about that, because otherwise I think it is really difficult at the beginning to understand the difference and the important differences of the space. And also, when you're first beginning, the tech, the price, the, everything that goes into it, what, from mining to, why, blockchains are so centralized, over here. So I got really lucky, and also I sounded really stupid at the beginning, but, I started to learn, I think, from the best of the best. But
I never thought you sounded stupid at the beginning, and so
appreciate
I liked your voice or your opinion on it, and it helped me understand it as well, because I was kind of learning a lot through you guys and the morning brief. So
yeah. That was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Tone brought you on. So maybe a question for you is just, when Tone started the law review, actually you were at my house.
Yeah, that was the first time I met Tone, was at your house. And you, like Adela, she was like, what are you doing this afternoon? I was like, oh, I'm just sitting here working. She's like, no, come with me. We're doing something. And then she told me on the way that it was, I didn't think I was going to be on it. I thought I was just going to watch you guys do it, which would have been cool anyway. And then, okay, here we go. So that was a lot of fun.
So for everybody out there, we're going to talk about price. We're going to talk about economics. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but also I'm going to throw at Sasha some law questions that I have. So can I actually just throw them at?
Yeah.
All right, let's have that. So Hester Pierce, our crypto mom, has thrown out guidance, and people are definitely almost binary on being upset about it, being excited about it. But I, as a lawyer, am a little confused about the importance of the guidance and really what the guidance is actually saying. Can you break it down?
Yeah, sure. So Hester has been very helpful, I think, to the community, and her role at the SEC as a commissioner. She's been very inviting to projects to reach out to her, and she'll have phone meetings with them. She'll review, different documents and let them, she can't let them know without an official, no action letter, which I think we've only had one of them, the token jet turnkey, no action letter, turnkey jet. But she understands what a lot of the companies who are trying to tokenize are going through. The agony of, if you're launching an exchange, how do you know whether something's a security or not? Because if you are launching an exchange and you list a security inadvertently, you can then be charged with running an unlicensed securities exchange. Likewise, if you're a token project and you're trying to launch and you're trying to follow the rules, but you can't, it's very difficult to know if you're a security or not. We have that Howey Test. Lots of people say, okay, well, my token is different than every other token because I'm selling a good or a service. And that is a valid argument. If you're selling a token like what they issued with the turnkey jet letter, those tokens only work to buy access to the jet. So they really are a service kind of token. It's like going to a movie theater and you're paying for that. But they're not allowed to go outside that ecosystem of the jet. So then other tokens that are not able to stay within that ecosystem, they have the options of using Regulation D, Regulation Crowdfunding, or Regulation A+. The A+ is very expensive and time consuming for a token to try and do. Like, the lawyers are charging upward of $100,000 to do this.
Seriously?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of A+ applications. The SEC has to approve it first. they've only approved one. So a lot of these companies have spent all this money, and Hester sees that, or Commissioner Curse, I shouldn't be calling her.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on a first name basis, but I've never met the woman and have a lot of respect for her. But Commissioner Curse sees their applications and, knows what they've gone through to get where they are, and probably knows that these people that are taking the steps to go through the actual Reg D, or the regulated channel, that they're probably not the same crowd that was the scammers of the ICOs. Now, I heard her on a podcast with Laura Shin last night, and I heard the podcast last night, it was from Friday, but Laura did a good job asking her, well, there's a lot of people that think they're not scammers, but their product is still going to be a scam. How do you feel about that? And Commissioner Peirce just said, well, we don't know, but there's no way to know right now if there's ever going to be a successful kind of token, company that right now they're locked from being on crypto exchanges if they're a security, or if they're not a security, the crypto exchanges are worried about touching them because they could be deemed a security. So it's like kind of a stalemate. And with this safe harbor that she proposed, they get a 3-year window to try and amp up to get some kind of metric that meets that sufficiently decentralized definition. So when you remember that long podcast Tone did when Ethereum got that, when the Hinman speech came out.
By the way, do you know the story behind that? Really quickly,
yeah.
Not the Hinman, and don't forget what you're saying. That's when I was getting my knee surgery. And so it was only supposed to be like a 4-hour surgery, so severed ACL. And then they figured out that it was a severed meniscus. So
God.
I was under for 9 hours, and Tone started off that he would do the show until I texted that I was out of surgery.
That's why it was a 9-hour show. That's awesome.
So Hinman Test.
Yeah. So as Tone and many others pointed out, that test of whether something's decentralized or not is a really moving target, and there's no way to really know if something is sufficiently decentralized. Now, Tone would probably say nothing is ever going to be sufficiently decentralized if it wasn't launched through a proof of work mining, protocol with an anonymous owner or, creator. But the SEC has said, Ethereum is now decentralized because it can't be shut down by Vitalik. They look at several different factors: how many people are building on it, how much something's trading, where is it available, is it listed on a lot of exchanges. Those were some of they gave us a really pretty extensive list of what categories or factors they look at as for something to be decentralized. Now, where a lot of people are criticizing Commissioner Peirce's safe harbor is that there's still no definite target of what is going to constitute decentralized, but she said she wanted to put it out there to the community before taking it officially to the SEC. Well, I don't know. Basically, I don't know that process of maybe it already is officially there, but she wanted to get feedback and comments so people can say, hey, you need to do it this way for it to work better, to create this decentralized target for 3 years out. So I think that's the right approach. I get the people who are invested in it and want to see it succeed, have them comment and say what they need for it to work. And the caveat here is that it's still the anti-fraud provisions of the securities laws are always going to be in place. So anyone lying is still going to be held liable under the securities laws. So we shouldn't see what we saw in 2017 of just like fake LinkedIn profiles and things like that. Mind you, we might still see it, and they might still be there, and they have 3 years to kind of exit scam now. So I think it's a positive overall, because at least we'll get some data on how this works. If the token projects that are trying to launch using these regulated crowdfunding models or other things, that her version is a lot more streamlined, and it allows the token not to be locked up for that first year, which is really important. If a token's trying to launch and get started, it needs to be able to move. Whereas right now, if you move the token in that 1 year period, you're automatically violating securities laws. So I think that's the good part, but I was surprised at how many people were coming out really negative against it. And I kind of got wondering, like, are they just pissed because it's going to be easier for companies to do this and they won't be able to charge as much money to go through this complicated and cumbersome process? That was my thought of why all the lawyers hated it, but maybe I'm missing, a major other reason. But I think, people can go and gamble on roulette, so let them gamble on ICO coins too, and as long as they know that it's a gamble and they have certain disclosures and they're not being lied to about the project, then it should be better.
Yeah, and there's so much being talked about. Fed coin is still being talked about, ECB, most countries around the world. I can talk a little to Singapore of what we're seeing. It is interesting, and I still always, as a Bitcoin maximalist, think that Bitcoin will rise. And if anything, there is going to be a day of reckoning that it'll show, if anything, just, the differences and really how to understand that there's just, with the ICOs and the other alts, how they are centralized versus how Bitcoin is just so different. Mm-hmm. And whatever Bitcoin truly becomes, because there's just so much we can talk about Lightning and the controversies mm-hmm. around what's happening, and I'm a big fan of what Christian Decker, has been building with Sea Lightning and everything, but there's so much still being built. It's so exciting that, it'll be interesting to see where and what Bitcoin truly becomes. And it's developing every day. To go back just to terms, everyone mentions the Howey Test. I'm going to be like the person who doesn't understand everything, because half the time I don't, just so we can break it down. What is the Howey Test?
Okay, so it started off with these orange groves in Florida. So it was the first kind of time so people were giving this orange grove, land. They were investing to the farmer. The farmer was planting trees and giving them a share of his orange sales. So the SEC looked at it and said, that's a passive investment. They didn't have, so the Securities Act of 33 and 34 have enumerated what are securities and they don't enumerate what's not, but there's a list. If it's a stock, it's a security. If it's a bond, it's a security. There's about 19 different things in there, forward contracts, things, but they didn't have anything that captured what this orange groves was. And so then they created a test. I always think of it as 4 factors, but I've seen it written a lot as 3 factors. But basically, it's if there's an investment of money into a common enterprise where you're reliant on the efforts of others. So it's any kind of passive investment would be considered an investment contract. If you don't have control over, if you're not doing any labor, like you're not out there farming those orange trees, but you're going to get a profit off the farmer's efforts on the orange trees. And you don't control, if he doesn't go and whatever is required to take care of orange trees, like watering them, if he doesn't go and water them as he said he was going to, if he just let them die, you couldn't control that. You might live in another state or something. So that's when it becomes, okay, well, we might need to regulate this under the securities laws because this person's offering a potential to make money and he might lie. And so we want to make sure he's regulated so that he's not lying to the investors. Is kind of how it all came about. But how it works in context of, Bitcoin or not Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's not an investment contract because there's no central party that you're relying on. It's what we call decentralized. So, no one person is in charge of it or could turn it down. But the difference with all the ICO companies is there is a central party that's issuing them, and they're telling you, or the idea behind it is that you're going to make a profit based on the work of that company who's issuing their new blockchain. So that's why the SEC can attach regulation to those under the securities laws. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and for traditional equities, which is kind of funny, which people don't often think about or know, is that you can actually trade orange juice futures. So it reminded me of that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, I'll stop bombarding you. We'll go back and forth.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about, so you've been to conferences and whatnot in Singapore. What's it like out there? I hear all the time, everyone that is trying to do some kind of crypto project in America are often saying, oh, the rules here are too annoying, we're going to go to Singapore. Is it a free-for-all, or what's going on there?
Yeah, Singapore is fascinating right now. They're really regulatory forward, and they're putting forward a lot of guidance, and also very interesting, and this is for any company, structures. They have this new, it just launched, I believe, a month ago, VCC type of incorporation structure. The MAS is literally putting out guidance every day. What's interesting, which is a very sad catalyst, is that a lot of the companies in Hong Kong started making the move just based on, the environment. So,
what environment? Do you mean regulatory or the
protests now virus, and there was just so much, and then so it was kind of the double whammy of Singapore becoming really an incredible location, and from a tax perspective, right? Cap gains, really taxes is incredible for any company that wants to be working there. And then also just the environment generally for working with everything that was going on with Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. I think Singapore is really trying their best to compete with, the Cayman Islands and Malta and Estonia, and although they're, tax haven places around the world that, have for the most part a very bad brand image, mm-hmm. Kind of a stigma, and for the most part, you really aren't the best places to be incorporating a company. So I think Singapore is doing a really brilliant job. Mm-hmm. They at least are really pushing for it. I don't know if people know, but we have our backed product in the States. They also launched the ICN backed, launched a product on the Singaporean Stock Exchange.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's the only other place. So, mm-hmm. So even with that, it already shows, and it was pretty much very quickly on the back of, so it was, I think, in December. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me, but very recently. So mm-hmm. they really.
And wasn't it the backed CEO that has just become a senator? That's exciting too.
I mean, there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. I'm actually really excited about the positive developments. And I do think whether, this is going to be controversial, but I do think that in the end of the day, it's going to show the divide of the importance and difference of Bitcoin. Already said this, but mm-hmm. And in the end of the day, the backed product in the Singaporean exchange is Bitcoin. Right. So, I think it's just kind of an interesting time. And then, we have the Halvening coming so soon. Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess I could stop even right there, because that becomes an entirely different, conversation. But the question is, with the price action, and we have a lot of TA, practitioners saying, from every single end of the spectrum, if anything, CoinDesk articles are so funny right now, because it's, $200,000, or we're going down, or
Bobby Lee predicted 200 grand on when Tatiana and I were interviewing. Whoa, Bobby. Okay.
Great. Yeah. Buy a house, please. So I think that no matter what, we're going to have news coming out. And mm-hmm. if anything, having news in the space creates a psychological impetus of, just excitement, irrational exuberance that can lead to the FOMO that we saw. And I think this time around, and we can talk about price action, but I think that the people that are going to be coming in, I think it's going to be more smart money, but also I think that we're going to remember what happened in the past. Mm-hmm. And so if anything, I don't think we're going to see the type of drop and the type of price action that we saw, the craziness of, and that wasn't happening, but when we spiked to 20K.
Can I ask you, can you define smart money and dumb money? I hear the terms all the time, and I never quite know what people are, what it means.
Yeah, you know what? It's probably not a good PC term. It really isn't. But I guess, and I'm not skirting this question, we'll go back into it, but because you have me thinking about just price action, at least from my perspective, of coming up to the Halvening, because that was like our conversation prior to this. I think that it's been traders within our ecosystem. And so when it comes to smart money, I do think when institutions and more, seasoned veterans and investors, smart money, I guess, get excited about all the different activity and the volume spikes we've been seeing recently, I think that people are starting to pay attention. I think that it's going to go beyond our ecosystem of already traders within the space, and start bringing in more people who traditionally are just volatility chasers in the traditional markets. So you guys aren't dumb. That is a really bad thing to say, dumb money. But I guess smart money of, at least for me, that just means that more seasoned veterans of traders or investors or, from that, again, that are coming from traditional equity world that are also now getting more interested in figuring out crypto and how to play this system. And again, whether it's, with products on the CME CBOE, backed product, the, GBTC or ETN, ETP, ETF, not yet, but whatever it may be, also, within their Schwab account, whatever it, either platform, but I do think there's going to be more interest in, we're going to see more. And actually, we're coming up to, the CME. Okay. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, that was good. So can investment advisors buy a little bit of that GBTC for their clients now? Is that's allowed? And
yeah, so that's pretty interesting, and that's the niche that Tyler and I had in the space, I guess, and the focus that we had is that Lucid Investment Strategies was a very, straightforward asset management firm, right, with institutional investors, high net worth individuals, okay, and an asset management firm is just simply put that, we have discretionary accounts and we have fiduciary responsibility over those accounts. So with your Schwab account, we can dip in, based on whatever your risk tolerance is, whatever portfolio, if you want, conservative, moderate, aggressive, but we can assist with that. And we can, again, dip into your Schwab account, make changes accordingly, or not. You can say, no, I don't want you to do that. So in, moving from 2016, actually, going forward, we were able to play the GBTC within our clients' accounts if they were comfortable with it. And the RIA we were under at the time actually, was more conservative, and they weren't that comfortable about GBTC.
RIA, is that the risk statement?
Registered investment advisors. So typically you are under an RIA or you have your own RIA. So then Lucid, we're registering our own RIA. So therefore we could have more of an aggressive risk profile, and therefore actually have portfolios that, again, could allocate more in Bitcoin, and especially with all the products that were coming out. So to your question, yes, within your traditional, account. So if, we were back and Tyler was still with us, I could just advise you if you weren't one of, our discretionary accounts and say, hey, I think it's a really good time to buy GBTC, and with GBTC, I should say, there's a lot of money to be played on the premiums and discounts. There's a good show where Tyler and Tone just talked about GBTC, if anyone's curious. But again, GBTC is a trust, right, and traded as penny stock. So it is not Bitcoin, but it has exposure to Bitcoin. So
do they own the underlying Bitcoin? Somewhere GBTC has it.
Yeah, so it is a trust, and it's structured as a trust. And what's interesting about that is there's actually more products coming out of people who wanted to create and are creating, I think, a better GBTC product. Now, Grayscale launched GBTC, and again, that's a Bitcoin investment trust.
I've heard they have the most Bitcoin of anyone right now.
They're massive, and they're a really incredible, reputable, firm that's veterans. But then after GBTC, they went for Ethereum.
They did. Okay.
They kept going. And so the GBTC ticker, the Bitcoin Investment Trust, is by far the most traded one. But they do have a suite of options. Okay. So,
and I wonder how they handle their like private key management. Because imagine how much they have. They must have a multi-sig with like 100 people needing to sign or something.
Right. And I'm probably wrong, but I did look into it. I'm probably wrong. Someone help me out the show, and I probably will sound stupid, but I don't believe they're FDIC assured. So they, so it's interesting, you know, again, that there's liability. And it was always interesting. I think, you know, when we were talking about before the backed product was launched of what is, you know, what warehouse that they were talking about, you know, how's it being done? I think that, you know, just custodianship right now, you know, is an interesting space, you know.
I know Fidelity's been doing a lot of work in it, but I don't know exactly what that means. Like I just hear, oh, Fidelity's getting a lot of custody solutions ready, but
so fascinating. And then of course, you know, when Coinbase launched their custody service, you know, that a lot of people ran into that. There's companies like out of Hong Kong called Hex Trust. There's a lot of, you know, custodial. Yeah, exactly. Not related to. But there's a lot of services.
Felix was the name of the mixer one. That stay away from those H names, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a bad idea. So that's interesting. So you know, there's so much to build in this space. Again, you know, it's difficult to get a bank account if you're starting off in the space. Silvergate has a nice monopoly in that, you know, that environment. But, you know, what do you think about just Silvergate and companies who, you know, or I guess just, I should say, what do you think about the current regulatory environment of countries being worried about and only allowing certain companies to, you know, be involved in this space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have one client that has a Silvergate account, and they are by far my most successful client. And I think having that bank account is a big key to their ability to succeed right now. A lot of other clients you either need $1 million or 300,000 transactions going through the account a month if you're a money service business for a bank to touch you, and a lot won't even touch you with that. So it's a big challenge, especially I work with a lot of Bitcoin ATM companies, and that's where it's the hardest for them because they actually have cash on hand that they need to deposit into the bank. But if they aren't big enough yet to have a bank account, they have to like go deposit it through several different personal accounts and then transfer it around or use like smaller OTC players. Some of the more reputable OTC players won't do transfers under 100 grand. So they need smaller ones like $5,000 a time. So they have to go to ones that aren't, you just never know what you're getting. But if you're using one of those OTC transfers, it's different than putting it to Coinbase. You still have to get the cash into your account. So you basically have to, it's the only way to do it right now. You have to go and put it in a bunch of different bank accounts and then transfer it into your other, like if you have a business account and the bank hasn't figured out that you're an MSB yet, that's your goal, is to not let them know. It's horrible, but that's, you know, as soon as they know, you're going to lose your account. So they'll move money into there and then wire transfer it to like an OTC desk, or they'll go on local Bitcoins and try and sell Bitcoin buy Bitcoin so that they can get rid of their cash and go deposit it straight into that person's bank account. So it's a real mess, and it adds hours and hours of work trying to navigate this weird system. So I would love to see the banks get more on board and just, you know, I used to work at TD Bank as a small business advisor. And even then it was difficult to open a business account. It required a lot more due diligence than opening a regular personal account, but nothing like what we see if they're opening an MSB account now is like a 66-page application sometimes. And they need personal financial statements and all your tax history, photos of your office, they really cross all the T's and dot the I's, but I don't think it's going to get any easier. We're waiting. You and I were kind of hoping that this FinCEN, notice would come out before our podcast today, but, we've heard bits and pieces that something's going to happen around that's going to impact cryptocurrencies. Oh, Gator. Oh, the dog.
Come on, you little pup.
You want to come on camera?
Come on, Gatorade.
He's not getting enough attention.
Nope.
Yeah. Or he doesn't like the FinCEN guidance. He's intuitive.
So what are you expecting from the FinCEN guidance? I was talking to a couple of friends today and I said, FinCEN guidance may drop this morning. And they said, wait, what? What is that? So what are we expecting?
So last May 9th of 2019, we got a guidance that kind of summarized all their past guidances, where they said who has to register as an MSB. And basically that is broken down to whether the person's a user, an exchange, or an administrator, and whether the company is taking custody or not. So anyone that's taking custody of someone else's assets and converting them from Bitcoin to fiat, fiat to Bitcoin, or to any other coins, Bitcoin to Ethereum. You take someone's asset, you give them back a different asset, then you're an exchanger if you're taking a profit off of it. So then once you're considered someone that's regulated by FinCEN, you have to follow the protocols of having a money you need to have a compliance officer, you need to keep good records, 5-year records, file suspicious activity reports, file currency transaction reports, and a whole slew of things. But it's once you know that you're that, you can comply with it. But the question for a lot of companies is, am I a money service business or not? They think that they're non-custodial. A lot of people come in, oh, I've got a non-custodial exchange, and then when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, it's like they're still taking a profit from it. They're still taking someone's assets and moving it. I don't know why they think they're non-custodial a lot of times. Like, it's just they want to be, so they call themselves that. But right now, if you really are truly non-custodial, you don't have to KYC everyone. You don't have to do all that. You're not regulated because you're not taking hold of anyone's money and giving them back something different. So I hope that the guidance doesn't impact that, because that will really wreak havoc on the whole Bitcoin ecosystem, because it would make it so that every wallet that, Green Wallet or blockchain.info, all these kind of, every non-custodial wallet that is people are using would all of a sudden have to KYC people. And that certainly hasn't come out. That's just what I hope doesn't happen. But what I think will be addressed, they talked a lot about privacy coins last May, and I think they still didn't fully understand privacy coins, and they talked about mixers, and that was the part of the guidance that I think lacked a lot of clarity, and it brought up more questions than answers. So I think they're probably going to build on that this year, and I think it will come out that, if you're mixing, you might be considered a money launderer. Like, that's what they just charged the Helix guy with, was money laundering and unregistered money service business. And the unregistered money service business, I think that's a bit of it's a case of first impression, because with the mixer, that was a custodial, like they were taking custody, but they were taking in someone's Bitcoin, giving them back, clean mixed Bitcoin. But it's still, they took custody, they gave them back a different Bitcoin. So maybe that's a transmission, or maybe because it's the same asset, it's not. I don't really know how that's going to get decided. But what they were doing was taking an Alpha Bay, like dark web Bitcoin that was used to buy drugs, cleaning it. And that, I think, is pretty clearly money laundering there. So I think the money laundering laws are going to be probably applied across the board to mixers, which means, mixers are going to have to go out of America.
Right. So not talking about the criminal case, what, how do you think that, and a lot of people have been talking about mixing right now, but how do you think that that'll affect just generally, the just mixing? I mean, if I'm taking your Bitcoin and I'm sending a different Bitcoin, do you think that this is going to have huge ramifications for just the whole, industry in general, or what could happen?
I don't think people are mixing a whole lot right now. I think unless you've got some criminal activity going on, you don't have a need to mix. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Like, some people, that are really into privacy might and my technical knowledge of how the mixing works is a little naive right now. I need to look up, like maybe try a mixer myself to, you can read about it, but until you go through the steps of sending a coin and seeing what's happening, it's hard for me anyway to really grasp what it is. So I know there's decentralized or non-custodial mixers and custodial ones. So hopefully the non-custodial ones still, remain unregulated. I think mixing, there's a fungibility problem with Bitcoin that looks like it's happening, and mixing kind of fixes that. So I think from what I can tell, it's a really important step to the growth of our ecosystem. But, from the government side, it's like, hey, you're hiding your money and you're laundering it, so we're going to regulate it. And I see both arguments as valid. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But hopefully the non-custodial ones still can do it.
Yeah. Okay. I have another question for you. And also, I guess this is something that's not talked about that I'm factoring into my price action or projections for pre-halvening, is that it's falling on tax season.
Yeah.
Which I think will be quite a factor. But okay, did
it fall on tax season other years, or is it always in May, or?
No.
I don't know. Yeah.
So no, I don't believe so.
Okay.
So my question is, I actually asked you previously, given cap gains that Tyler and I were making, how do I account for my taxes? And you helped me out. And so at spot during the time that I received, and if I hold it over a year, yada, 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 it seemed pretty straightforward. Now I do think that, and maybe everybody here is a genius, but at the time I didn't know it was so easy to understand what taxes I needed to pay. And I know a lot of people here think that, okay. So anyways, for everybody else here, could you explain just pretty simply, like, how are we paying our taxes come tax season if you are holding Bitcoin, if you're trading? Have it.
Now, the hard part about the taxes is people didn't keep great records in the 2015, 16, like the earlier eras. But if you were trading on Coinbase or somewhere like that, or, you guys under your business account obviously have records of when you purchased the Bitcoin and sold it. So if you've got those records, then you treat it just like a stock. The purchase price, the sale price, the difference between that is either your capital gain or capital loss. If it was done, if you were day trading or short-term trading under the year, that is just, if you had a gain, it's treated as your regular income level. Whereas if you held it over a year, it becomes a capital gain, which is going to be typically around 15%, not so lower than your income level. This year, though, they added a complication of the airdrops. So it came out a few months ago, and I don't think it's going to be something that's easy to implement for the IRS at all. But they want everyone that received an airdrop to pay tax on the value of the airdrop. Even if they didn't touch the airdrop, they're still supposed to have a tax consequence as income the moment the airdrop hit their account. Now, a lot of coins were airdrops that were valueless. So you can just write it off as, that was a worthless, like it didn't have value. But for Bitcoin Cash, I think was the main thing they were trying to target. It did. By the time it came on Coinbase, the first time it was tradable. So people who had their own keys, they got their Bitcoin Cash in I think June or July. People that had their Bitcoin on Coinbase didn't get their Bitcoin Cash until like 6 or 8 months later. Yep. And that is, I think, being considered income the moment that Bitcoin Cash hit your account. Now, everyone said that the regulation was ridiculous because the IRS maybe didn't know how many different airdrops or forks there were. There's, I think, hundreds of them, especially if you had a My Ether wallet, you got airdropped a ton of different things. But the real one I think they were going after was the Bitcoin Cash. And, I think they probably received a lot of questions about that from accountants, the couple of years leading up to it. And it kind of makes sense for that one. Like if you got a bunch of stuff that was worth $2,300 and then you sold it, okay, when it came in, it was income, and you didn't have a cost basis other than the $2,300, so that's added to your income for the year. Even if you didn't sell it, that's where it becomes a little bit unfair. I think if people just were like, screw that, I don't want to touch my Bitcoin Cash, even though it's worth money, I'm, fundamentally against them, so I don't want it. They still are going to have to, if they had it come through Coinbase, who has to report to the IRS. Well, they don't have to, but they had a whole lawsuit about it where the people with over 20,000 or something, their information is being sent to the IRS from Coinbase. So it's a long story. I don't know if I explained it very clearly.
So maybe it's not as confusing. So easy, but it seems as if it's still pretty straightforward with Bitcoin.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Lucid, we offered to our clients, and we had a pretty high even fiduciary, a minimum, I should say, of investment to be able to work with us. We actually did fiat, Bitcoin, if you wanted to pay us in flawless diamonds or gold coins. We never got the diamonds. We didn't get the coins, but actually we worked with a lot of people with coins. But we did get Bitcoin. And various payments, mainly for consulting or for the webinars or for the workshops, etc. And then we did pay some of our employees, if they asked, out in Bitcoin. So that's also, if you remember why I was asking, is just how do we account for those various levels? And for, the month that I got paid out in Bitcoin, how would I account for it, during this taxable year, especially because I put it then on Kraken to trade. And, it seems as if everything starts getting confusing, but it actually came down to being quite simple, at least for Bitcoin. Sounds like everything else is.
Yeah.
So maybe everybody stay away from everything else. You already know I'm a maximalist.
Yeah. And if you buy and hold your Bitcoin, like you don't have to pay tax until you sell it. So it's only, if you're earning it from mining, or you earn it as like your employees might have earned it, then it's income the same way their cash would be treated like income. But if you're someone that, say, bought some Bitcoin and just haven't sold it yet, there's no tax implication until the day that you sell it, at which point you'll have to calculate what you paid for it, what you sold it for, and the difference, and then pay tax on the difference if it was over a year at your capital gain rate.
And it's at spot at the time that you received it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So pretty simple.
Yeah. It's not too bad, but but it's the people that are, say, trying to, like, if you're a store and you want to implement Bitcoin payments as something that people can buy coffee with. Everyone uses that coffee analogy, but say we have a cafe and we want to accept Bitcoin. That's going to make it a little bit more challenging for us than if we were just accepting cash, because we'd have to keep track of the price of every single time someone bought it, and then versus when we sell it. So it just, it really adds a layer of complication that I think is hindering adoption. And Coin Center right now has put this Crypto Tax Fairness Act. I mean, that's what they called it a few years ago. I think they have it, it's under a different name this time, but it basically asks for the de minimis exemption that's applied to other currencies. So the value is $600. So if the transaction's less than $600, it wouldn't have a taxable implication. So I think that would make a lot of sense if it came to fruition.
Yeah. I have a friend in Singapore who, at all his restaurants, actually, he runs a Lightning node. And if you pay in Lightning, that if you pay in Bitcoin, you get a 15% discount.
That's awesome.
Holy crap. You can ask me for it. You know who you are, you rock. But yeah, that's been a topic of conversation with the latest Lightning developments, for sure, that, I've been thinking about how do you do the taxes around that. I know, we're talking about really exciting things right now. Taxes. But yeah, that's very interesting.
And so what, can you give us a price prediction for the Halvening? I know you probably hate when people ask because it's such a hard question, but well, I know you're one of the people that do, look at the price pretty closely and have some good insight. So,
well, I appreciate that. I am which I've always said, TA practitioner, and I know very little, but I should say, so I have my HODL stash and I day trade, and that's how I do it. I freak out if I have I was more of a position trader or swing trader when Tyler was with me. And thank you, Socrates. He was always helping me out as well. But myself, I always freak out a little bit if I have position and fall asleep at night. So I do love day trading. But so on the daily, when I was playing around with the 15-minute today, I could bring it up later, but it actually looked a little bearish to me. But what I find interesting is, I guess I should say I have no idea. You saw this insane drop. I mean, you see everything. I think that post Halvening, we're going to see a lot of activity, which is very exciting for us traders. I think that there's going to definitely be a lot more activity. Coming into it, given historicity, we've seen wonderful bull runs afterwards. The question is, right prior and right after, what are we going to be seeing? And, everybody is massive bull right now for post happening right afterwards. And I don't think that that's going to be happening. And actually, again, on just a small time frame, when I was looking at the 15-minute, we are in a bearish posture. I know I'm going to sound real stupid to everybody else here who's actually brilliant at it, but I don't know. I like looking at volume more, and it just seems like there's a bit of a war going on, which is fun and exciting. But also, since there's such a war going on, I think that it's playing around a little bit. But at least this morning it was looking a little bearish. I think, the fact that we're playing with 10K a lot is a little dangerous. So that the probabilities of falling a little lower, maybe even to 8,500 is more possible, but Bitcoin, who knows, but I will keep my HODL stash.
Do you think we're still at a point where like one trader or, some whales can move the market, or are we past that?
Totally. And we've seen that again. We saw that 5 days ago, less than. So, and there's speculations on who did that, but each time, and that's, I'm not going to put on a tinfoil hat with that. Right. But for sure, and that's where also it'll be interesting when we finally have enough guidance regarding pump and dumps and regarding, all the various, legal guidance that we have for traditional markets of what people do. But that, for the most part isn't really existing, even though regulators are saying that there's the dangers and that they're seeing it. I do think for sure, one whale can move the market, and we've seen that before. And so at least for me, and coming again, I'm no TA expert by any means, but coming from a fundamental background and a traditional equities background, you see one activist investing hedge fund go in and they're a complete market maker, right? So, people are following, they see that, someone's bought up Sony, whatever it may be, Sotheby's as an example, and boom, oh my God, they're brilliant. And it can, appreciate 15% in a week. It hits a price target, they sell, they can say it was not a pump and dump because it hit their price target. We had that, prior, but we don't have that guidance to my knowledge, but you're the lawyer in, on Bitcoin. So I think that a lot of people can take advantage of that. And I think that we have some big bag holders for sure. I wish it was you and I. It is not. Who knows? I don't know what you're hiding.
Not enough to move the market, that's for darn sure.
But I get maybe back at you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there already exists some regulatory. It's weird because the exchanges, if they're starting to sell their own bags, that would be like proprietary trading, which is illegal on the traditional exchanges. But because they're not regulated securities exchanges, I think a lot of proprietary trading happens, and good for them until the party's over for that.
Yeah.
I think probably this year we'll see, with the same kind of way has Commissioner Peirce presented the safe harbor for tokens. I think the 2020, not that came to light yet, but I think something's going to happen this year for the American crypto exchanges to get some heightened regulation that's almost like making them a quasi securities exchange, so that they have to follow at least some of the more basic like disclosures and, the proprietary trading rules and some of the, anti-market manipulation side of things should be applied to them, and how they're storing it. And I think that's a large reason that they haven't figured out how to regulate them, because the exchanges, the actual stock exchanges, they have insurance and a lot of rules on the storage, but it's not that difficult to store. They're not working with stock certificates anymore, and it's all in a centralized storage area, which I guess it is on most of the exchanges too, but it's just the different nature of holding these private keys versus holding, electronic stocks.
Yeah, most definitely. And I guess because these exchanges, for the most part that we're talking about, KYC, AML, they would know who is, dumping or pumping and again, minimums, maximums that they're allowed to have on the account. So I guess it is changing the environment, at least in the US with exchanges that have KYC, AML, but that's probably not the whales that are pumping and dumping. Or maybe, probably. Again, there's speculation on Mr. BitMEX having played around, a couple days ago, but yeah.
Yes. What are you most excited about this year for Bitcoin?
Ooh, that is definitely a tough question. That is definitely a tough question.
Yeah, as I asked it, I'm trying to think, what am I most sorry to put you on the spot there.
Well, no, good. Because there's a couple companies and projects that I'm toying with that I haven't announced yet that I plan on working with full time. I do think that there is more opportunity for valid, great hedge funds to come into the space and build very interesting products that help the space, are lucrative, are very exciting, and again, very much help the space. I guess I should say, again, what Tyler and I were doing with asset management, the word asset management, everybody snoozes, right? Like, we're working with 401ks, we're working with retirement funds for Australian clients, the supers, it sounds like boring stuff, right? For the most part. But anyone that's knows traditional markets knows that actually asset management is really exciting. You hold a lot of money. And not only do you have a lot of power, but I personally and Tyler love the fact that, so I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout way, but that we can make sure that people have a really good experience with Bitcoin in a really safe way. And that would be their entry point into actually buying, Bitcoins. But again, if I could help your retirement fund grow, let you have exposure to Bitcoin, teach you what GBTC is. When you say, what the heck is that? Actually you're coming to me because you're saying, I want exposure to Bitcoin. Can you help me with GBTC? But grow your retirement account, help your kids go, with an educational fund, have a good experience with it. Make sure you don't lose money and mortgage the house. It felt really, really good because that's really important that, that our retirement funds are taken care of. But again, for the ecosystem that, well, actually not you, I shouldn't use an example because you've had Bitcoin for a very long time, but people, no coiners entering the space, can just have that good experience and then start to learn more about it, talk to their friends about it in a really good way, like teach them, hey, it's as easy as going into your Schwab or any e-brokerage account, let me teach you, and then start learning everything else. But I think it's a really nice soft landing. And again, if there's a lot of volume into the space via GBTC, then, again, there's a lot of activity, and that's even great for institutional investors. So to go back, what am I most excited about? I think if asset management firms and large ones, start investing in more of these products, if hedge funds, and there's some great ones entering the space that are waiting for that, to be able to get in on that VCC as an example in Singapore and around the world. And I think that when they do a great job that is not scammy, kick out the scammy hedge funds, which most of them for the most part have already disappeared. I think that there's just a lot of cool products to build, closed-ended funds with Bitcoins in them. I think that there's going to be smarter investors. There's going to be new products. There's going to be new firms, and that are going to do really well, that are going to play it well. And that a lot of, again, the institutional investors or veterans or just people that that play the markets really well are going to be excited about. And like of someone like me who loves building, you know, like that, you know, that would be a route where, you know, I could dig my fangs into, I guess. What about you?
That was a great answer. And you really could tell you're excited about it. I'm excited about a lot of the same things that you beautifully articulated. So, but you know, as an attorney, it's fun. And like, even though the guidance might not be what we want, I love when new stuff comes out. 'Cause it's like you get to dive through it and see, you know, it's like we're really creating new, like everything's new laws and new ways of looking at this, or forcing the government to examine old laws and kind of revitalize them. While unfortunately so far we haven't seen the most cutting edge or the best, you know, new laws coming. It's everything else, like we're dealing with things like the 1946 Howey Test from the Supreme Court, whereas this is forcing everything to be looked at in a new light. So that's what I kind of find interesting about it. And you know, I'm here for the pump too. I think it's gonna be really fun this year if we see Bitcoin take off, because it was like, I know it was almost scary in 2017, early 18, going to conferences and just seeing piles of people with all these, but it was kind of like cool at the same time, even though a lot of them turned out to be scammers. It like got all these people very excited about technology and talking, and there was a huge level of energy that was there, and you know, I kind of want to go see that happen again, even if it's going to be a mess. It's just fun to watch, and some new good things will come out of it. Like you know, there'll be a rising star that helps promote the whole community.
Well, and given we are perma bulls, you know, it would be great for our HODL stash.
Yeah.
I don't like Lambos actually, just generally, but there's a lot of great cars that I would love to buy.
I just want a Porsche Targa.
Great one.
Yeah.
And then that, and no matter what, with this, you know, we're gonna, for any of the traders out here, look, we love volatility. We're in crypto, right? Like, I mean, we're crazy, like, for some volatility. So at least that's going to be fun this year. For sure, we're going to see some good volatility. And I truly believe for sure we're going to take off this year. The question is just how much post-halvening, you know, are we going to see it? And, you know, again, just when. But during that time before that, or, you know, again, it's just going to be so much fun. But, I look forward to you buying the Porsche.
Yeah, and we'll be driving. Remember we were driving in California last year in that, what was it, the mini convertible? That was fun. Yes. But this time we'll be in a Porsche or even.
What about a helicopter? I always wanted to get my
license. The Kobe kind of made me feel like I don't want to drive in helicopters anymore. Well, it's.
That's a
it's still a very stylish way to get around. Let's not.
That's a sobering note for the end.
Sorry.
Well, hovercraft. I mean,
the flying cars,
magic carpet. You know, whatever it may be. But magic carpet. So I don't think we're gonna get Gator on. I could try to grab him, but he's probably he's probably gonna yell at us. But Sasha rocks.
Come on, mister.
Who's the Gator? Who's the Gator?
Hey!
Who's the Gator? Who's on the moon?
Oh, Gatorade, you're on TV.
All right, everybody gets the puppy action at the end. Okay, that's a good ending.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Gator. All right,
Thank you, Leah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, rough.
Wait, what do I even? Oh, end meeting. Bye. Yeah. End meeting for all.